So do I just start when I start, or do you tell me to go? Shabbat shalom. We are going to start the preliminary service on page 99. Modani lefanecha melech hai v'kayam shechazarta bi v'nishmati v'chemla Rabba emunatecha Rabba emunatecha Rabba emunatecha Rabba emunatecha Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. Please turn to page 103 for preliminary blessings. On page 103. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasach v'bina להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בת חורין. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עיוורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם רוקה הארץ על המים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המרים מצדק עבר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה לי כל צרכי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוזר ישראל בבורא. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוטר ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן ליואב כוח. וננו היום וכל יום לכם חסר רחמים בעיניך ובעיני חורנו ותגמלנו חסדים טובים. ברוך אתה אדוני גומל חסדים טובים לעמו Yisrael. Please turn to page 121 for the mourner's Kaddish. Those in mourning or observing Yahrzeit, please rise. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirutei, v'yamlich malchutei b'chayei chon, u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael. בהגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי המעיין. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וירומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי הקודש הבריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירם ביעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה משמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. Please turn to page 122. Please rise for Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh v'Reshit, Baruch Omer v'Yoseh, Baruch Gozer Kayim, Baruch Mirachem al haaretz, Baruch Mirachem al habriot, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov L'Reyav, Baruch Elad V'Kayam Lanetzach, Baruch Podeu Matzil, Baruch Hu Uvaruch Shemo. Please continue silently. Yachiche Olami Melech Mishubach Umfoar Adei Ad Shmo Agadol, Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Me'olam Batishbachot. Page 123 at the top. Odu l'Adonai Kir Vishmo, Hodiyu v'hamim alilotov, Shiru lo, Zamru lo, Sichu b'chol niflotav, Hitalelu b'shem kodsho, Yismach lev mivakshei Adonai, Dirshu Adonai, V'uzo bakshu fanav tamid. Please continue silently. Page 124. Ki gadol Adonai umhulamid v'nora hu al kol Elohim ki kol Elohim ha'amim elilim v'Adonai shamayim asa asa. Please turn to page 126. Hoshia et amecha, varech et nachlatecha, ureim, 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 ureim v'nasim, ureim v'nasim ad ha'olam, mechlatecha, urem, 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 v'nosim, urem, v'nosim ad haolam. At the Arab. Fahani b'chastecha v'tachti ya ageli b'shuatecha ashir l'Adonai ki gamal alai. Please turn to page 128 for Psalm 34. David b'shonato et amo lefi Avimelech vayigor shehu vayilach. Please read silently. In the middle of the page, Mi ha'ish hechafetz chayim, ohev yamim lirot tov. Mi ha'ish hechafetz chayim, ohev yamim lirot tov. Netzor l'shon chamera usvatecha midaber mirma, sor merav aser tov bakei shalom verod vehu. Mi ha'ish hechafetz chayim, ohev yamim lirot tov. Podeh Adonai nefesh havadav v'lo yeshmuhu kol ha'chasim bo. Please turn to page 130, Psalm 91. Yehoshe b'seter elyon b'tzel shaddai yilonon. Please read silently. Ikra eni v'nei ma'anachi v'tzara achaletzehu v'achbedehu. Orech yamim ahasbiehu v'yarehu b'yishuati. Orech yamim ahasbiehu v'yarehu b'yishuati. Orech yamim asbiehu v'yarehu b'yishuati. Orech yamim asbiehu v'yarehu b'yishuati. Let's turn to page 136 for Ashrei. Ashrei, Ashrei v'techa, od yalucha selah. Ashrei am shekacha lo, Ashrei am shadonai Elohav, Tehila l'David. Aramimcha Elohai hamelech, bavarch hashimcha le'olam va'ed. B'chol yom avarcheka, v'alel shimcha le'olam va'ed. Gadol Adonai umulal me'od, v'li gdulato en cheker. Dor l'dor yishabach ma'asecha, gvurotecha yagidu, hadar kevod hodacha, uvdivrei niflotecha hasicha, vezuz nerotecha yomeru, uvdulatcha asaprena, zecher rav tuvcha yabiu, betzidkotcha yiranenu, chanu rachum Adonai, erech apayim uvdo chesed, Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Yoduch Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha, kevod malchutcha yomeru, ugvuratcha yedaberu, l'odia livnei adam gevurotav, uchvod hadar malchutov. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshalcha bechal dor vador. Samech Adonai lecha hanoflim, zokef lecha kfufim, einecho elecha yisaberu, v'ata noten lahem et ochlam bito, poteach et yadecha u'masbia lecho chai ratzon. Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav, v'chassid b'chol ma'asav. Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikra'uhu v'emet, ratzon yireyav yaseh, v'yeshavatam yishma v'yoshiem, shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, v'et kol harshaim yashmid. Tilat Adonai yidaber pi, v'yivarech kol basar, shem kodshel olam va'ed. V'anachnu nivarech Yah, me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Page 141. Hallelujah, 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 el bekacho, hallelujah, birki ahuzo, hallelujah, vigvarata, hallelujah, kero gulo, kol hanshama, Hallelujah, 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 kol hanshama, hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel v'chinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, b'minim v'ugav, kol hanshama hallelujah, 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 kol hanshama hallelujah, 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 v'tziltzei shama, hallelujah, b'tziltzei drua, kol haneshama hallelujah, kol haneshama hallelujah, kol hanshama hallelujah, 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 kol haneshama hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Please turn to page 145 at the top. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Please continue silently. at the bottom of page 146. Mi melach umi ishvelach umi aroch lach el hagadol gibor v'nara el elyon konei shamayim v'aretz nehalelcha shabechacha v'ercha uvarech et shem kodechecha kamor leDavid v'harchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol kravai et shem kodsho. Shochen ad maharom v'kadosh shemo, page 147. V'chatu ranenu tzadikim Adonai la yesharim nava tehillah. Sheken chova kol yitzrim lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Eloi avotenu v'imotenu lehodov v'alel l'shabech l'fael l'memader levarech v'alel kalesek al kol divrei shibur v'tishbachot David ben Yishai avdecha mishichecha yishabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu, page 148. Beracho v'hoda'o me'ata v'ad olam baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol b'tishbachot el ha'hoda'ot Adonai niflaot abocher b'shirei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabah b'yom ha'divrach chirutei v'yom lich malchutei b'chayecho v'yomecho v'chayecho v'Yisrael b'galav v'zman kariv v'imru amen yehi shmei rabba mevarach v'olam omer almayah yiparach v'yishtabach v'yiparach v'ramam v'yinaseh v'yidhadar v'yidalev v'yidalal shmei kudesha brichu v'heila mikol bechata v'shivata tushbechata v'nechemata damira b'yalma v'imru amen. Please turn to the next page for Baruch. Baruch et Adonai havorach. Baruch Adonai havorach le'olam ha'ed. Please turn to page 150. You may be seated if you were standing, which you should have been. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarech hoshech oseh shalom uvaret hakol. Hakol yoducha v'hakol yishalchucha v'hakol yomru en kadosh k'Adonai hakol yiromemucha sela yotzer hakol ha'el hapoteach b'chol yom daltot sharei mizrach uva keach alonerakia motzecha mamimka malvana mimchon shivta umeir laolam hadarim aleha berachamim, uv'tshuva mechadesh b'chol yom, tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Hamelech hamromam levado me'az hamshubach v'hamfoar v'yamitnaseh mimod olam. Elohei olam berachamecha harabim rachem aleinu adonu zenu tzor miskabenu magen ishenu mis gav badenu en kerkecha v'en zulatecha efes piltecha umido melach en kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh v'en zulatcha malkeinu l'chaye ha'olam haba efes biltecha go aleinu limod HaMashiach ve'en dama lecha Moshienu lichiyat hametim. Please turn to page 151. El Adonai kol ha'mahasim baruch u'varach b'fi kol neshama godla v'tuvah le'olam da'at u'tvuna sovavimoto ha'mitgaleh al chayot ha'kodesh v'nedar b'chavod al ha'merkava Zechor mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo tovim me'ora shebar Eloheinu yitzaram b'dad b'vina uvaskel koach ugvura notam bahem liyom meshem b'teref kevel Melein ziv fikim noga no ezivam b'chol ha'olam smechim b'tzeitam v'tzasim b'voam osim b'yema ritzon konam Per v'chavonim lishma sola verina lezecher malchuto kara l'shemesh v'yizrach v'hikin surat havana shevach notnim lo kol tzeva marom tiv ered ugdula srafim v'ofanim V'chayot HaKodesh. Page 152. La el asher shava mikol mahasim. Continue silently. Tibarach Moshe al shavach ma'aseh yadecha v'amrei or shasita yifaru chasela. Page 153. Tibarach Turenu Malkein v'go aleinu b'rei kiddushim. Kulam avim, kulam berurim, kulam gibarim, v'chulam oseh be'emav yiraretz al konam, v'chulam potchim et piem b'dusha u'tohara, b'shir v'zimra, u'mvarchim u'mshabat Mavachim Ufarim, Umaritzim Umakdishim, Umamlichim, Hashem Hoel Hamelech, Hagadah Gibor Vanara Kadoshu. V'chulam mekablim alehem, O Malchut Shamayim zeh mizeh, v'notnim b'rshut zeh lazeh, v'akdish li'atzam benach haruach, b'safav ruach ma, u'v'nima kedosha, kulam kechadonim v'yomrim b'yirah, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot melech haaretz, Kivodo, Be'alfani v'chayot hakodesh, Be'rash gadol minasim le'umat srafim le'umatam, Mishabchim ve'omrim, Baruch kivod Adonai mimkomo. Le'el baruch nimod yitenu. Silently. Chadesh b'tuva b'chol yom tamid, ma'aseh reshit kamor lo seren gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. Or chadash al tzion ta'ir v'nizkechu lamer al yaro, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Page 154. Hava Rabbav Tanu. In the middle of page 154, V'ha'erinenu b'toratecha, v'da'abeg libenu b'mitzvotecha, v'yachei levavenu li'ahava u'yira et shemecha, v'la'onevosh li'olam vahed, v'la'onevosh li'olam vahed, ki v'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hanavra b'hatachnu, nagila v'nismecha, nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha. Please gather your tzitzit in preparation for Shema. Still on page 154. V'havinu l'shalom me'arba kanfod haaretz, v'tolichenu kamamiyot le'artzenu, ki el poel yeshurata, uvanu v'charta mikolam v'lashon, v'keravtanu l'shimcha hagadol, Selah, Selah, be'emet, lehodot lecha u'yachercha, u'yachercha bi'ahava. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'yamo Yisrael bi'ahava. Page 155 for Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol vavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher Anochi mitzavecha היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושפך וקמך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו שותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. Please continue silently on the next page, page 156. Adonai Elohechem Emer V'yatziv v'nachal v'kayam v'yashar v'ne'eman v'ahuv v'chaviv v'nechmad v'na'im v'nora v'yadurum tukan umkupal v'tohov v'yafeh hadavar zaleinu li'olam ha'ed. Top of page 157. L'dor v'dor hu kayam, kayam, u'shma kayam v'chisonacho u'malchuto v'yamunato la'ad kayamet u'dvarav chayim v'kayamim. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu malkeinu melech avotenu v'imotenu go'aleinu go'el avotenu v'imotenu yotzreinu tzor yeshuotenu podenu matzilenu me'olam shemecha en Elohim zuatecha ezrat avotenu v'imotenu atahu me'olam. Tehillah, Lel Yom Baruch Hu Barach Moshe Miriam B'nei Yisrael Chanu Shira B'simcha Rabbah V'yamru Chulam Mi chamocha b'ohelim Adonai Mi kamocha Nedor b'kodesh Nora tehilot osefela Shira chadasha Shibchu gilulim Leshimcha sefat hayam Yachad kulam Hodu v'himlichu v'amru Adonai yimloch Li olam va'ed Tzor Yisrael Kuma b'Ezrat Yisrael Uvdechinu mecha Yuda v'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai Tzva'ot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Go'al Yisrael. Please stand for our Amida on page 159, we'll do the through the Kedusha together, and then we'll finish silently to page 166. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agidi lavtecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah El Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol Zocher Chesed V'Imachot Umevi Goel Ibnei V'Nehem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Ufaked Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufaked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atarav Le'Hoshia Morid Hatal Mechakeh Chaim B'Chesed Mechayei Metim B'Rachamim Rabim Samech Naflim V'Rafeh Cholim Umatir Hasurim Umekayim Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Bal Givurot Umido Melech Melech B'mid Chayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atalach Hayom Mitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei Hamitim. Page 161. Nekadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam Keshem Shema Hakdishim Oto B'Shmei Marom Katuv Al Yanevi'echa V'kara Zel V'amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz kevodo. Oz b'korash gadol, Adir v'chazak mashmim kol, midnasim leumatzrafim, Le'umatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo Malkeinu Tofia V'timloch Aleinu Ki mechakim anachnu lach Motai timloch b'tzion b'kara b'yameinu le'olam va'ed tishkon tikadav v'tikadash b'toch Yerushalayim ircha Ledor vador Netzach netzachim Ve'neinu tirena malchutecha Kadavar amor b'shirei uzecha Al Yedei David Meshiach Tzidkecha Imloch Adonai Le'olam Elayetzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagig נקדיש, ושפחך אלוהינו מבינו ליום ושלום ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please continue silently through page 166. On page 166, who says shalom bimramav, who yasa shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru imru amen. Yasa shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, Yasa shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Next page for Kaddish Shalem. Yikadav yikadashem merabah, b'yama tivrach yirtev amelich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayecho b'Yisrael, b'gala v'zman karim, v'imru amen. Yehesh merabah mevarach le'olam mehimaya. Yiparav yishtabach v'yipar v'ramim aseh v'hadar v'alev v'dala, shmei kudesh abrichu, li'ela min kol v'chata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata damiram b'yama, v'imiru amen. Dikabal soton voton d'chol Yisrael kadamav, avuha v'divishmaya v'imru amen. Yehi shama rabba mitshmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imiru amen. And now we will have Deborah Goldstein to provide a Dvar Torah for us.
Shabbat Shalom. I was so excited when Linda asked me to offer this devar this Shabbat. I love this parsha. Now, that may sound a little strange, so let me explain. Some years ago, I can't remember how many, but it was at least 10 or 11, and I'm thinking more like 12 or 13, actually. Rabbi Jenny assembled her first cohort of adult bat mitzvah students. Bat Torah students, actually, since some of us had a bat mitzvah celebration as 12 or 13-year-olds, but wanted a more female-focused experience as adults. Others of us, for various reasons, had never gone through the preparation and learning involved in being formally welcomed into the Jewish community as adults. As we always tell the kids, all you have to do to become a bar bat mitzvah is wake up on the morning of your 13th birthday and voila, you are a bat mitzvah. But the planning, learning, and commitment that goes into the ceremonial aspects are something for which you have to work. So a group of about 15 of us studied with each other and with Rabbi Jenny for 2 years. At the end of that time, we gathered with our friends, family, and fellow congregants to mark the end of that phase of our Jewish learning. Rabbi Jenny elected to deliver the formal devar herself, how to choose which of us to do so otherwise, but she invited each of us to contribute to a booklet of our individual musings on that week's parsha or haftorah. The parsha was Korach. Now, you know I love to write, talk, and teach, so I was excited to read and study this parsha. The more I read, the more it seemed to me that I had a unique take on that reading. How could that be? In over 2,000 years, I was the only one to read it that way? So finally, I asked Rabbi Jenny. She, too, had never heard anyone interpret this portion the way I did. Well, happy as I was to find that I'm unique, I was also more than a tad bit surprised. I mean, look at all the ancient and modern scholars who have pored over the Torah, turning it and turning it, as they say, to find every possible nugget it contained. But there I was. I was the only one. Over the years, I looked from time to time for someone who agrees with me, but so far, I seem to be alone. Not that I'm bothered by it, mind you, just really, really surprised. So what do I see in this parsha? First, a brief recap. Korach is the kinsman of Moses and Aaron, a Levite as they are. You will remember that the Levites have been tasked with service in the Mishkan and later the temple. They serve as the functionaries who perform the sacrifices and mediate between God and the Jewish people. That's the first thing you need to know. The second is this. At Sinai, Moses, speaking for, or in the words of, God, enjoined the people to be a nation of priests and a holy nation. Everyone, we are told, both present that day and unable to be present, presumably you and me, and all the generations in between, were also present and also received the Brit between God and the Hebrew people. That's the background. Here's where Korach's story begins. All the community, Korach notes, are holy, all of them, and the Lord is in their midst. This being the case, Korach has a problem. He wants to know why it is that Moses is the only one who does, speak to and for God, who has a special relationship with the source of power. So he stands up and asks the question, why then do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation? Moses is not pleased. You can almost hear the people gasp. And how does God respond? God opens up the earth, and the earth swallows up Korach and all his followers. End of problem, end of story. Commentators, both classical and modern, while they may be a bit taken aback by the severity of God's response, nevertheless indicate that Korach was way out of line and God and Moses were well within their rights to bring him up short. He was arrogant. He was selfish. He was in it only for himself. He was seeking power and glory. He was challenging Moses' authority and by extension God's, not because he wanted to share the wealth, so to speak, but because he wanted more of the wealth for himself. Not a populist Korach, but an egoist. I don't have enough Hebrew to be able to speak knowledgeably, but I'm told the Hebrew used in these verses implies speaking out of turn, as it were, not being properly respectful, not knowing one's place. There can be no doubt Korach challenges Moses. The texts tell us that Korach and his companions rise up against Moses and that they combined against Moses. There is no doubt that Korach is confronting Moses' right to exclusive leadership, or more fundamentally, Moses' extraordinary connection with God. And here's where I have a problem. Aren't we supposed to question even God? Aren't we God wrestlers? Isn't it our job to push back against arbitrary authority? More to the point, what if Korach is disrespectful? What if he doesn't know his place? What if he is challenging the basic structure of the society in which he lives, that while they are all holy, Moses is just a little more holy than the rest of them. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Throughout history, this has been the tension between the haves and the have-nots. The haves always defend their position by emphasizing their innate, inherent, might we even say God-given, right to their power. They are the chosen ones because of gender, religion, color, military prowess, or another of the myriad ways in which humans divide themselves into them and us, depending on the time and place in which they live. And have-nots, they have been told, and often believe, that they are in the place which God or nature, or their own shortcomings, have fated them. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, a social-political philosophy arose called social Darwinism. Articulated in the wake of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, survival of the fittest, the idea that through natural selection, those species or species traits flourish that best serve the survival of the entire species. In the same way among human beings, those who were most able, innately, biologically, and if we are to be honest, racially and religiously, would rise to the top and by nature and by natural right would control the societies in which they found themselves for the benefit of everyone involved. The fact that all those people were white, male, Christian, and European, or European descended, was proof that the theory was not actually theory, but fact. The same could be said of the divine right of kings. In medieval times, the prevailing social theory was that God chose kings to be his, and it was his, spokesmen on earth, to rule in his place, to impart the divine will to those who were less qualified to rule. If some of those kings were a tad bit dicey, maybe even a tad bit dim, that was beside the point. God moves in mysterious ways which we mortals are unable to understand. If by chance another king comes along and overthrows the former king, well, that must be God's will as well, and the new king must be God's elect. Men were born to rule over women. White people were born to rule over people of color. Christians were born to rule over Jews, Muslims, and anyone else who was not Christian. Clearly, Europeans were born to rule over Asians, Africans, and any of the indigenous people whose countries they, through the goodness of their heart and with the best interests of everyone concerned in mind, came along and conquered. And when those lesser peoples decided they had had enough, that they were in fact not any lesser, and possibly in some cases maybe even better, than the supposed superior class, they are accused of being ungrateful, arrogant, savage. They don't know their place. They don't understand the gifts those in power bring to them, the ways in which the powerful look out for everyone's welfare. The powerful are in it for themselves, after all, but for the greater good of society as a whole. Give those people any power at all, and chaos will ensue. The Black Lives Matter movement is a modern illustration of this conundrum. Black people marching incites violence. Black people kneeling is disrespectful. Black people confronting police is dangerous. White people, on the other hand, have a constitutional right to demonstrate for the redress of grievances, often, by the way, carrying weapons. As an aside, it's worth noting that the first gun control laws were passed in response to pictures of Black Panthers with guns strapped across their chests. A black man with a gun was, in and of itself, threatening. Whatever we may feel about the reasons for the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th, the ways in which the police prepared for that demonstration and the way they prepared for and reacted to the demonstrations over the summer in reaction to the murder of George Floyd are clear indications that when people outside of the power structure speak up, they are regarded as stepping out of line in a way that people who are within the power structure are not. The same could be said for women. Women are aggressive, men show leadership. Women are shrill, men are forceful. Women are emotional, men are thoughtful. Without even being aware of it, the number of times men speak over and across women in group settings is far greater than the number of times they speak over each other. As this country expanded west, settlers often backed up by the military wiped out whole tribes of natives, sometimes in very savage ways. When natives fought back, or even fired first in an attempt to keep the invaders out, they were labeled savages. And by right of being the more civilized people, the government that supported the settlers declared their land forfeit and their way of life unworthy of being respected or preserved. Which brings us back to Korach. Korach saw a situation which he believed was inequitable. He believed that power was distributed in a way which denied other people, including himself, control over their society. He believed that if they were all holy and that if God did indeed walk within their midst, then he and his compatriots were as worthy of and had as much right to access to the the source of power in their society, which is to say God. So he stood up and said so. Was he arrogant, disrespectful, stepping outside his proper place? Probably. Or maybe we see his demands as arrogant because the demands of the have-nots are always viewed as unreasonable by the haves. Power, as Frederick Douglass said, concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. I would suggest that the text reads the way it does because history, as we know, is written by the winners. But that doesn't mean they're right. In the short term, the earth may open up and swallow those who demand better for themselves and their fellows. But in the end, they leave a trace, which grows into a movement, which grows into dynamic social change. In the end, one might argue, Korach won. Here we are, not priests, not even rabbis, on the bima, davening, teaching, and generally partaking in our share of holiness. God is in our midst. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you, Deborah. Once again, another good one. We appreciate it. So, because we're going to move on to Musaf without our Torah service, unfortunately.
Torah service coming soon, right?
Torah service coming on July 3rd. Watch out. So, page 184 for the Chatzi Kaddish before Musaf. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah v'yalmad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chaydecho be'Yisrael b'gala b'gala u'v'zman kariv v'meru amin yeshmei Rabbah mevarach V'yalama me'amaya yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yiramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kudesha b'richu li'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'mihiram Alma v'meru, amen. Page 185, we'll start the Musaf together and finish silently on page 192. Please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agidilatacha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah El Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanavra El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'kanei Hakol V'zocher Chasdei Elohim Ahor V'meviko Elivnei V'nehem L'man Shemo V'Ahava Melech Ozer Fokeg Moshiach U'Modin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Raham U'Fokeg Tzara Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atorah V'Choshia Mori Atah Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayei Metim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunatahu L'Shenei Afar Michamocha Bal Gevurot U'Mido Melech Melech Mimid U'Mechayeh U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Neman Atah L'Chayom Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei Ametim. We're on page 187. Na'arizcha v'nakdishcha v'sotzi Adonai Tzevaot melech haaretz kevodo. Kevodo male male olam male olam kevodo. Kevodo male male olam male olam kevodo. Bishar tav shoalim shoalim zelazeh ayem ekom kevodo. Bishar tav shoalim shoalim zelazeh ayem ekom kevodo lihumatam. Baruch yamehiru. Baruch kevodo Adonai mihim kamo. Mihim kamo. Yifem berachamim v'yachonam ham yachadim shemo erev havoker bechol yom tamid pahamayim b'ahava shema omrim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Avinu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu V'Yashmienu V'Rachamav She'ini Le'ini Kohai Li'olachem Le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem U'divrei kahot shecha ka'amor ka'ata le'emor Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohayetziahu l'dor v'dor Hallelujah L'dor v'dor nagi gadlecha U'netzach netzachim Kedushacha nagdish v'shivcha Elohim mipi Elohim v'shalom le'ed Ki omelech kadosh v'kadosh ata Baruch Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Silently to page 192. page 192. Who says shalom bimramav, who yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. I want to apologize. I realized I did not have my mic on when I was at the Ark, and so you probably didn't hear me. But anyway, let's turn to page 203 for Kaddish Shalom. Yukadam Yukadashem Merabah Bialma Dirachi Retei B'Amlich Malchutei B'Chayachon Yirmechon Chayachol Be'Yisrael B'Galav Yizman Karim V'Meru Amen. Yehesh Merabah Mevarach Elam Me'amaya Yiparach V'Yishtabach V'Yipar V'Ramam V'Yinaseh V'Yadar V'Yadalev V'Yadalav Shmei Kudusha V'Hichu Li'ela Mikol B'Chata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechamata Damiram B'Yama V'Meru Amen. Tika Bautso Tony Vayton D'Chol Yisrael Kodam Avon D'Vishmaya V'Imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Mishmaya V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Ahoseh Shalom B'Mamav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'Imru Amen. Let's turn to the next page for Ein Kelohenu. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kimalkenu, Ein Kemoshienu, Michelohenu, Michadonenu, Michemalkenu, Michemoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Sheitiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Eketoret Asamim. Next page, 205, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liatzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohoralenu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu she'unat hashamayim v'yoser haaretz u'moshav yikaro mashamayim imahal u'shchinat tuzav b'gevhei meramim u'Eloheinu Einod Lememokenu Efesulato Akahatu B'Torahato V'yadatahayam V'ashevota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'Shamayim Imahal V'Yal Haaretz Mitachat Einod. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Please turn to page 207 for the Mourner's Kaddish. And those who are observing Yartzeit, please rise. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabah, v'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevarach le'olam omei amayat. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitpar v'yiramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei kudisha brichu. V'yeila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. And I guess I'll go over there and do announcements. Do you want to do them, Deborah? Or?
Sure.
Okay, Deborah will provide announcements. And before she does that, I just want to say that I can't wait to see everybody in person on July 3rd. That will be our first Shabbat where everybody is welcome and will come. And it's been a really hard year for all of us to be away from each other, and it will be great to be back together again. So see you soon.
It will be great, won't it? All right, announcements. Monday, June 14th, which would be day after tomorrow, 7:30 to 9:30, the documentary film and discussion, A Separate Voice, which explores the personal lives of traditional Orthodox and Hasidic Jews. That's being sponsored by the synagogue. Following the screening, there will be a discussion with co-director and co-producer Janice Michelson, who is also the grandmother, of a child in Beth Meyer preschool. If you want to attend that program, if you go to the website after Shabbat and you register, you'll get the Zoom link. March Through Jewish History, a class taught by Amy Rips on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Each class is standalone. I think she's taking a century a week. So you can join at any time. Again, the registration link is on the website. If you go there and you register, you'll get sent the link. Jewish COVID-19 Vaccine Initiative. Beth Meyer is partnering with Judea Reform Congregation in Durham to support mobile vaccination clinics serving minority populations. As you know, in spite of the fact that the vaccine is now readily available in the state of North Carolina and, well, pretty much everywhere in the country, there are certain underserved populations, and there have been several initiatives to try and reach out to those populations and make sure that the vaccine is available to them. Coming to a clinic is not always easy. Getting an appointment is not always easy because of technological issues and so on and so forth. So we are partnering with Judea Reform to support these mobile vaccination clinics. If you're interested, contact either Roberta Blumberg or Sarah Furston. If you don't have their contact information, you can get it off of the Beth Meyer website, or if you want to contact me, I can give you that information as well through Social Action. They're staffing clinics, not giving the shots, obviously, unless you're a medical professional, but staffing the clinics in other ways, and transportation and so on and so forth. Our first Shabbat picnic of the year is going to be Friday night, June 18th, from 5 to 8 p.m., so bring your own parv meal and join us for services at 8 o'clock. That's our first step toward being together again, as Linda said. Being Jewish, Exploring Jewish Identity, Monday, June 21st at 7:30 p.m. Again, registration is required. Any of these programs for which registration is required, if you just go on the website, there should be a place where you can register. If you register, you'll get the Zoom link right away, and then you can participate in the program. I think that's it. Linda, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No.
Okay, well, that's my paper, so I'm done.
Okay, and we'll just end up with Adon Olam on page 211. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'et nasa b'chefso kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nara Vehu haya, vehu hova, vehu yiyah b'tifara, vehu yiyah b'tifara, vehu echad ein sheni, leham shilo lehachbira, b'li reshit, b'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz, v'ha'misra, Velos v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzor chevli v'yetzara v'hu nisi umanos li minat kosi b'yom ekra minat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado avgid ruchi b'eti shan Ibra, Imrechi Gaviati, Adonai li velo ira, Adonai li velo ira. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Azamera, Azamera, Uzi Edecha, Azamera, Azamera, Vani Ashir.